What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Gamescript. And tonight we're going to be looking at the matchup between the Las Vegas Raiders and the Green Bay Packers. The Raiders are favored in a 45.5-point total. The Raiders are 2-point favorites. And these teams are two teams that are trying to find direction. The Green Bay Packers have rallied behind a young quarterback trying to fill Aaron Rodgers' shoes. Vegas has brought in a dusty quarterback who has a history with their head coach, who is already on the hot seat a little over a year into his tenure. So it's two teams in very different directions. And one common theme is Davante Adams, who formerly played with the Green Bay Packers, but is now the top wide receiver over on the Raiders. Vegas's players have been frustrated this season, speaking out against their coaches and generally being unhappy with the direction of the team. They've been losing and they have not liked it. And meanwhile, the Packers have hope for the playoffs with a 2-2 record. And tonight's matchup is going to come down to pressure. The Packers bring it and the Raiders don't. And Jordan Love has the ability. He's among the best in the league with a clean pocket. And meanwhile, Jimmy G crumbles under pressure. Yet the points have swung from the Packers as favorites to the Raiders as 2-point favorites in this matchup. So the million-dollar question for tonight is why? And I'm going to be joined by my friend Spread Astaire to go over this match. And Fred Astaire is a giant Raiders fan. So we will see what his thoughts are on the situation and the meaning behind this point swing after this. Hey, what's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching Gamescript. And this is a show where we like to break down these island games from a DraftKings Showdown perspective and try to find a less likely avenue that we can take with building our lineups. We like to face 20% of the field as opposed to 80% of the field. And if you could please hit like on this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel, that would be great. And I'm joined today by my friend Spread Astaire. Spread is a huge Vegas Raiders fan, and he's going to help us break down this game tonight from the perspective of someone who follows the team closely. And I'm glad to have Spread on. Spread, what's going on, man?
Oh, I'm excited to be here today because I'll tell you what, I want no part of this game from a betting perspective. But just to get a little action in, I feel like building some showdown lineups. We did a great job with the Sunday morning, right? I was able to cash with the lineups we built. Both lineups I built cashed. The thing we did is we went the kickers and the tight ends. And I don't regret that because the tight end matchup against Buffalo was good statistically going in. We used the information. It just didn't go our way. But we're still able to min cash, put a little in our pocket, and then roll the dice again tonight. So let's see if we can find the right captains and start these builds right.
Yeah, and I did feel like Dawson Knox was getting a decent amount of action in that game. He just didn't get the right action. And at some point, what's the rookie tight end? The rookie tight end got hurt at some point, so he came off for a few
Dalton
plays.
Kincaid.
Yeah, Dalton Kincaid got hurt at some point, so maybe that affected him a little bit, like more than was let on in the broadcast. But yeah, so we moving on to Monday Night Football, where we got the Las Vegas Raiders taking on the Green Bay Packers. And Spread and I were talking about this game before we started rolling, and the total is 45.5, with the Raiders right now are 2-point favorites on where you're seeing it, Spread. 2-point favorites.
That's right. I'm using Bookmaker right now. They're -2 right now. Total 45.5. And I told you this threw me off when Boy, that's getting loud there. Hope that's not coming
Yeah,
through. Threw me off. That's 2 points there that it moved through the line.
Yeah. What Spread's talking about is earlier in the week, it was the Green Bay Packers were the actual favorites in this game. And now it's swung over to the Raiders. I'm not sure how much of that might have to do with Aaron Jones. We just got word from Pelissero.
Aaron Jones isn't worth 4 points, and we're just getting that news today. And
Right.
this line moved before the news.
Interesting.
How much is Jones worth? 0.5?
Like yeah, maybe. Yeah. Like it's hard
Are
for
we
me
giving
to
him
judge.
a full point? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's hard for me to judge sometimes in some of these injuries, because I would think that Aaron Jones would like be a pretty significant one with looking at who's behind him on the depth chart, because AJ Dillon hasn't done anything this year, and they just had to call up a rookie off the practice squad, and the rookie's actually been called up. This is his third time getting called up, so I think they actually have to sign him to the roster now. So they got this Patrick Taylor is being signed to the roster, I believe, at some point today. And he'll be an interesting guy because we've seen the struggles that A.J. Dillon has had. And Spread and I were talking a little bit about this before the show too. Maybe the Aaron Jones injury might lead to more rushing attempts by Jordan Love. We've seen it in the past with him. I'm going to go right into looking at our DraftKings stuff here. Now, the last time that Aaron Jones was out of the lineup, we can see with Jordan Love against the New Orleans Saints, had 9 rushing attempts for 39 yards and a rushing touchdown. Before that, like week 2, Aaron Jones was also out and he only had 2 rushing attempts, but that 9 rushing attempts against the Saints is interesting to me. Spread, you try to see what you can do to break this down a little bit from the Vegas perspective. Ignoring that tangent that I just went on.
No, I mean it's a great tangent, and we talk about Las Vegas, and it's a team that, hey, if it was a Sunday full slate, we're going to be targeting going against this team almost every single week, right? It's up there with Broncos, right? One of the worst defenses in the NFL. And hey, are you surprised? I'm not, because these guys whiff on draft picks the way that Rob Deere missed pitches. And for those old enough to remember, Rob Deere was a player that hit almost 30 home runs in the 80s and had a batting average right around 200. So everything he hit went out of the park. He missed everything else. That's how I feel the Raiders draft picks have gone, right? They hit that one home run with Max Crosby, and everything else has been a swing and a miss. You look at these teams, you do this every single week. If you were to say who on the Raiders could start on the Packers defense right now, it's like Max Crosby and maybe Trevon Moehrig, right? Nate Hobbs probably might get a little action here, but 3 out of the 11 tops. None of our linebackers start. None of the other defensive linemen start. So the Packers are going to have a great advantage here defensively. Where the Raiders have the advantage, I would say, would be the quarterback experience. We know that Jordan Love, the reins have been turned over to him, and we've seen with these young quarterbacks how inconsistent they can be, and I don't necessarily think it's a knock against them. Obviously, very short attention span society where after one bad game, everyone wants to ruin these guys and call them a bust. So they're using the growing pains there with Jordan Love, where Garoppolo, we kind of know what he is. And if he gets time, he's going to do well tonight here. I also see Aiden O'Connell's price pretty high. Now, is that because they put these prices out earlier in the week and they didn't see who was going to start and they weren't sure?
Yeah. That was likely, just DraftKings being overly cautious just in case something went south with Jimmy G's injury situation.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I think it's going to be a fun game tonight. I have this game projected right around the total. If I were to bet right now, I would take the points. I have this game pretty even. I have it 22.9 to 22.7 in favor of the Packers. So not a huge edge there. Not enough for me to get involved on a primetime game from a betting perspective. But I think it's going to be fun to build some different lineups on how we think the game will go. So I think a lot of it comes down to, for both these teams, who do you think is going to win the first half? Who's going to win the first half? Because that's going to dictate how the second half goes. Do I trust Vegas yet? No, I don't think the vibes are good around that team, right? I mean, we saw Chandler Jones go completely AWOL, and we know that Chandler Jones has had issues before, right? I mean, he showed up naked at a police department in New England. That's not normal, right? But I also think that it's part of the underlying thing. A player that I'm really going to like for captain here has been openly critical of Josh McDaniels, and he's really teetering on the edge of losing this locker room. If they fall behind tonight, it could be another bloodbath, and we could see some interesting sideline antics, right, that we get to analyze, right? The same way we saw Stephon Diggs yesterday, and they were asking about that. And there was one other one that they meant to ask about on the sideline. Who was it?
Eagles?
Was it the Eagles yelling?
Eagles were all over each other on the sideline, and that was something that I've been kind of foreseeing for a few weeks here, and I thought the Eagles were going to lose. Like I kind of projected them to.
You're right. It was Kelsey.
Yeah,
getting at his coach. That was the one I was thinking of. Yeah,
and Hurts too. Hurts and the coach were going at, because Sirianni is just not a good coach, and it's just like
you don't think so. I mean, at this point, don't we have to give him some for his results?
I think I think we do. Yeah, I hate to admit it, but we do. But the situation with him is just those early press conferences that he did, like where he was just saying this, like just dumb stuff, and I haven't gotten over that. And then seeing like how they weren't able to adjust last year to different things happening, and then him losing both the offensive and defensive coordinators. And like, it made me feel like, okay, this guy's not going to be able to handle all this stuff, but I think it's like Jalen Hurts is just kind of, like willing this team right now. I think it's a lot of Jalen Hurts leadership as opposed to the coaching leadership that's happening right now. But, you see this on the sidelines for the past few weeks now with the Eagles just going at it. It's like AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts a few weeks ago were going at it. And then this week you see everybody going at it. AJ Brown was interviewed a couple weeks ago about the situation on the sideline with Jalen Hurts, and he even told them that the coach did not make it any better when the coach tried to intervene with them on the sideline. So, just a bunch of stuff with the Eagles, but we'll save that for a different showdown. Spread, are you still there? I think.
Can you hear me? Okay. My computer froze up, but I heard everything you said, but I've disappeared off the camera. So right. As long as you can hear me, I'm fine.
Yeah, no, we're good.
Sure, we'll lose, the thousands of female followers that tune in just to look at me, but we're gonna forge ahead here, Simon.
There you go. So so Spread.
So I would say Sirianni is average. I wouldn't say he's not good, right? I mean, how many not good coaches do we have? I mean, he's definitely better than Brandon Staley, right? I mean, he's not actively hurting his team.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, he's not Josh McDaniels where they're openly rebelling against him.
Yeah.
So that's why I'd say he's average. He's got to be somewhat good. Just to get this level of success. So
you can't take away from a coach when the team is winning. You have to wait until they start losing before you pile on them. But I just feel like they're narrowly winning their games this year. They narrowly beat the Redskins. They narrowly beat the Rams, and then the Patriots in week 1. The Patriots have proven to be an awful team, and the Eagles just barely beat them.
Right, let me make a couple counterpoints there. For the week 1, these teams use the week 1 is preseason now.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to throw those results out. I'm actually tinkering with the model where I take all week 1 results out.
Yeah.
Because I don't have preseason results in my model, right? And then the Redskins or the Commanders always play them tough. That's the divisional matchup. It's like that Steelers-Ravens game that happened yesterday. Throw out the records. And then I also think for an East Coast team, that Los Angeles trip can be tough. So I guess I'm not down on them as I should be, but the 2 times that I bet on them, they've covered for me. So I'm happy about that.
That's all we care about at the end of the day. And so as far as the outcome of this Raiders game spread, which side are you tending to take? I think you mentioned the Raiders side, but tell me what you like about the Raiders side in this game tonight, and try to put a little bit of clarity, because this game to me, could go either way. I tend to lean to the other side, and I'll give my argument after that. But why don't you tell us why you like the Raiders tonight?
Oh, I don't know if I like the Raiders tonight, Simon.
Oh,
I
okay.
think I just like Davante Adams
Yeah.
in the captain spot off the game script that the Packers get out early. This team starts trailing. Jimmy G just feeds his main guy. I know that we talked about Alexander, but which way will the familiarity work? And I know that Alexander's great, but I think it's going to work in Adams' favor here. But I don't really like the Raiders to win this game. I mean, if you absolutely force me to make a bet, especially at these current numbers, I take the Packers money line. The way this line's moved, I thought the original line was correct, which is why I didn't have a play on it to begin with. And I'm surprised that the Raiders have taken so much money. And I'll be looking. I'm going to talk to Tyler about that here in a bit and see what are we missing here for all this money to pour in on Las Vegas. So I think if you do think the Raiders are trailing, Davante Adams and the captain makes fantastic sense. But we know how these things go. Anything can happen, and obviously their back's against the wall. McDaniels is coaching for his job. I don't think there's any way he makes it through the season unless he manages to turn things around.
Yeah.
So we will see how it goes. One other thing I'd like to factor in, I think there's going to be a Green Bay heavy crowd tonight. I think some of these West Coast teams have given away their home field advantage, right?
Yeah.
Because as a Raiders fan, I'm certainly not traveling to Pittsburgh to watch them play. But people in Pittsburgh are certainly traveling to Las Vegas. Yeah. Same with Green Bay. And we saw that yesterday with the Philadelphia Eagles. In fact, I saw one Los Angeles person tweet, I didn't know so many people in my city were from Philadelphia, right? As they took over that stadium yesterday. So I also think that we have to count in Jimmy G could be running a silent count tonight here if the Packers take over the stadium.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I was thinking like maybe part of the swing in the like the money line or whatever was that maybe the narrative of Davante Adams facing his old team, like maybe that has kind of drawn in some interest to the point where money was just coming in on the Raiders side. Do you think that would have anything to do with that type of swing? Because that's going to be a huge narrative tonight.
If you told me that was your narrative for betting, I would say that's a terrible take. If you told me that's your narrative for playing him captain tonight, I would say it's a fantastic take. Because I think that, let's say the game goes and it's wonderful for me as a Raiders fan, right? And we have a great game and we're winning. I still think they're going to feed him because of that, right? But I don't necessarily think it gives them an edge. They feed him normally, right? I mean, usually we don't take wide receivers that high in best ball on bad teams.
Right.
And that's the case, is that even on a bad team, he gets his numbers. So, I think that's a great narrative for best ball, because I think, especially if things go well, right? I'm worried the Raiders. If I were to bet it, I'd take the Packers, but it's not that implausible, right? The Packers have put up some stinker performances too. It's not that implausible that the Raiders come out with a fantastic performance tonight and then they keep pelting Davante even with a lead. So I think that's a great narrative for DFS. If you're using that narrative for betting, I think that's going to get you in trouble. A lot of players play their old teams a lot. And first of all, they didn't even do him wrong. He asked for out and they traded him.
Yeah.
Not like a true revenge situation. So, I like that narrative here for DFS. I do not like it for betting.
So, so to talk more about Adams here, to Spread's point, like he had 13 targets last week, 20 targets against Pittsburgh. Then he's had 8 targets and 9 targets. So he's definitely getting a ton of work. And last week he got hurt. It looked like he was going to be out of the game, but he came back in. Turns out that he's got some sort of a shoulder injury. And that's kind of another strike against Adams in this game tonight with his heavy captain ownership. I think I saw a projection at around 18% captain ownership. So you take that in addition to the fact that he's got this injury that he's dealing with, but not only that, like the matchup itself isn't all that great, like because Jimmy G is going to be under a lot of pressure and he does not perform well under pressure. And so Jimmy G himself might struggle, which obviously is going to lead to Adams having a little bit of his own struggles. What one angle with this captain tonight, like obviously the narrative of Davante Adams and Josh Jacobs basically controlling the Raiders offense for the last since Adams joined the team, basically, and since McDaniels has been coaching it. One of those dudes has hit like 20 fantasy points every week since they've been together, pretty much. So the captain ownership is really like there's 18% for Adams, and I think I saw 18% for Jacobs. So it's kind of, if you want to go in the direction of one of those dudes, and you got to pick and choose between them. But I see a chunk of 36% of captain ownership that we can fade and look at some of these other options here who have, equally good chances of being the top scorers on the night. But what are your thoughts between Davante Adams and Josh Jacobs, not only from a matchup perspective, but a captain's perspective there, Spread?
This is a tough one, right, Simon? And I prefer Davante Adams. But if we continue to talk through this, right? Remember, I told you I said I would do 5 lineups with Davante as captain before I make it Jacobs. I'd like to actually rephrase that statement. The Packers have had so much problems against the run.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to build one of each here on the show here. I think we'll have to do. I'm back in on Jacobs a captain. I think my builds are now going to go split on Raiders between either Jacobs or Adams. So, you know what? I didn't really factor in the Packers' inability to stop the run earlier. And let's see if McDaniels gets that thing going. My worry here is that we fall down 17-0 and Jacobs gets phased out. That's my main worry when you're rostering Jacobs. But let's find some of these other players that we like. We can fill them in, and then I think you can make each captain because they're pretty similarly priced, right?
Yeah.
So you can make a couple builds with just swap your captains out.
Yeah, we're looking at Davante Adams is 16.8K and Josh Jacobs is 15.9K. So you got like $1,000 difference in the salary there. But obviously, Josh Jacobs has gotten off to a pretty rocky start. He held out throughout training camp basically, and week 1 was basically his preseason, and week 1 through week 4 have pretty much been him kind of acclimating to getting back into NFL shape, and that puts him in a interesting spot tonight because Green Bay is giving up the 5th most points per game to the running back position. Green Bay is giving up 30 points a game to the running back position, and that's a big deal. They're also giving up a lot in the receiving game to the running back position. They're giving up the 2nd most receptions per game at 6.5 receptions a game to the running back position. So Green Bay is about as good a get-right matchup as you can get when it comes to being a running back who started the season off kind of slow. So that puts Josh Jacobs in a really good spot, especially when he's battling that narrative of Davante Adams playing his old team, which in the DFS world, like people love those narrative street situations, and Davante versus his old team is a pretty big one. But like if given the two having equal ownership, given the situation with Adams having a worse matchup and having the shoulder injury, if I had to lean towards one of those dudes as captain, I would lean probably Jacobs, even given his struggles, just based on this matchup. But it's not a comfortable way to go. I think both of them have flaws, and seeing them at 18% each at captain makes me want to go a complete different way. I wanted to go Aaron Jones, but as we're finding out about, like 10 minutes before we got on here, Spread, Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network is reporting that Aaron Jones is looking like he's going to be out tonight. So as we were kind of talking about a little bit earlier, the struggles that we know that AJ Dillon has had, and the Packers having to call up Patrick Taylor from the practice squad, that makes me like Jordan Love with his rushing ability, but it also makes me like the passing game for Green Bay a lot more, because if they have unreliable running backs, you got to figure that they're going to be passing more in this game if the run game's not working, because they don't want to keep Vegas in this game with those dangerous weapons that they have. And Jordan Love, this goes back to pressure again. Like, Vegas is not getting pressure on quarterbacks, and Jordan Love is one of the, so far this season, he's got one of the highest ratings when throwing with a clean pocket out of the entire NFL. So, that puts him in a position to succeed. And Jordan Love, as far as an ownership perspective, let me take a look at what his projected ownership is here. I'm seeing Jordan Love. He's number 3, but he's only got 11.2% ownership. If you wanted to go with one of his receivers, we're looking at Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs as both having under 6% ownership projection. So I see a very interesting situation developing in this game with that injury news, but also with the heavy ownership going towards Davante Adams and Josh Jacobs. So what are your thoughts there, Spread? What kind of impact do you think that Aaron Jones being out of this matchup is going to have, not only on Jordan Love, but his receivers tonight?
So from a betting perspective, not as much as you would think. Yeah. I think so much of the running efficiency is just based on the ability of the offensive line to get blocks. And we talked about the Packers being unable to stop the run. The Raiders aren't as notorious for it because we don't play as many high-profile games. But they're not as good against the run either, especially with Chandler Jones out. That was kind of one of his unheralded traits last year. I felt that even though he wasn't putting up stats, you saw how good he was at containing the run. And in fact, I think that's what led to him having less pass pressures, was the fact that he was being asked to contain so often under Patrick Graham's defense. What I think it does from a DFS perspective is it's going to make Dillon some heavy chalk. Would you agree there?
That's a tough one, because Dillon's been struggling. So I don't.
Well, we talked about a Jacobs get right game, right? Isn't it a get right game for Dillon too? And at 4,600, with the usage that I think that we could protect, I'm talking about him in the flex right now at 4,600. It's really tough to leave him out. Look at the people in that area, right? You got AJ down at 46, and you can have Packers defense kickers or Raiders defense. Then Zamir White, who I loved in best ball and hasn't done anything for me. So that was a mistake by me, is down there at 3,200. So if your options are Dillon or a kicker or a defense, who would you prefer?
Oh, Dillon, yeah.
Right. So he's going to be so chalky. But I want to treat it like a free square and just throw him in there. And then, we'll see how it goes. I think that there's some interesting arguments for him at captain as well. But help me out here. So let's start with the Raiders focus build. Yeah. Let's just say I have Davante or Jacobs at captain, because like I said, I think your builds are really similar because they're so similarly priced. So either one of those, right? You want to go Raiders captain. You like the Raiders to get it done at home here in Vegas. Do you put 2 quarterbacks in your lineup? And it's a general question for you too. And so I've been looking, as we've been doing more and more of these showdowns, doesn't seem like a 2 quarterback build hits the optimal very often.
No, a lot of times you need to have a running quarterback for it to hit the optimal, or for 2 to hit the optimal, like a couple quarterbacks. But you also have to have a pretty big, back and forth. But, it kind of depends on the value of the quarterback too. Because if I'm switching over to flex here, Jordan Love, we're looking at a 9,800 salary.
Mhm.
Usually that's a pretty good salary for a quarterback, especially with a little bit of rushing upside to him. If we're looking at Jimmy G though, Jimmy G's at 9,400. Like Jimmy G, I don't know. I'd want to put 9,400 into a Jimmy G investment just based on his ability to throw under pressure and Green Bay's ability to generate pressure. Because I don't think Jimmy G is going to have a good game tonight. So I definitely would not want to pay 9,400 for him.
So my next question for you is,
Mm-hmm.
can I build an Adams captain lineup without Jimmy G in it?
Yeah.
Do I need the correlation?
Yeah, because like Adams can rack up a ton of PPR points. So Adams could be like getting thrown to all night and making receptions. Jimmy G could have 200 yards, right? And Adams could have every single one of those yards. And that would mean, Jimmy G would get, let's say, a point per 25 yards. So that's like 8 points for Jimmy G for those 200 yards. Meanwhile, Davante Adams would have gotten 200 plus whatever the bonus is, so like probably about like 26 plus whatever the receptions are. So he could be well over like 30-40 points off of like a 200-yard game by Jimmy G if he's getting all the action. So yeah, there's definitely, you can definitely start a receiver of Adams caliber, I would say, like in the captain without worrying about putting the quarterback in there too. And it might even be like a smart move not to put the quarterback in there, because a lot of people think that if you do put the receiver in captain, then you have to have the quarterback in there too, which isn't always the case. But like people tend to think it's a rule,
Yeah. All right. Well, that helps me with my question. But my only problem is I'm building these builds, and there's one correlation that I do love. There, it's a pun there as well. And I'm not finding, if I take Jimmy G out, I'm not really finding anything that I feel like spending up for.
Yeah.
Look how barren this range is between 4,400 and 6,200.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing.
Yeah, a lot of backups. You got the defense. You got AJ Dillon. Luke Musgrave is kind of interesting.
That's the guy I love. I want Love and Musgrave. The Raiders have been terrible defending tight ends. We have bad linebackers, and I think he's big enough to get receptions against Mulrig, even if Mulrig plays the coverage well. So I think Jordan Love and Luke Musgrave are just, if you put Love in your lineup, I would put some Musgrave in there as well.
Yeah, and with Musgrave, I made a case for him in that Detroit showdown last Thursday, or a week ago Thursday. And I really liked Musgrave in that matchup. And I thought he was going to have his breakout game that week, but then he ended up getting hurt. Like something like the first series of the game, like injuries have been like just haunting me this year with like best ball and with showdown slates. But yeah, Luke.
Yeah, welcome to the NFL, right?
Yeah, right. Musgrave was set up to have a pretty big game against Detroit, but he ended up only getting that one target. So he's probably off a lot of people's radars, but he had 8 targets against New Orleans, put up 10.9 fantasy points. He has yet to score a touchdown this year. So if his matchup is really good against the Raiders, then that would make him definitely interesting in that price range that Spread mentioned. There's not a lot of stuff going on there. But
my final point there would be, with Aaron Jones out, who becomes the guy that we're running screens for? And I don't know this for sure, but I'm thinking I would run him for Musgrave, my tight end. I can chip off a block, and then I hit my screen. So I feel like he could get maybe some of that short dump off receiving work that's taken from Jones. I don't think it necessarily goes to Dillon.
If we're
that's
looking at
another reason why I like Musgrave.
If we're looking at Dillon, the weeks that Aaron Jones were gone, he had 1 target and no targets.
Right. So they don't throw to him. He's line up and pound the ball. So Musgrave gets the short work, in my opinion. It could be someone else, right? Maybe they just run slants to Jaden Reed or Christian Watson. Are you surprised to see Dubs priced ahead of Watson at this point?
Not really, just based on their performances. Dubs has kind of built a rapport with Jordan Love at this point, and
which is why we loved him in best ball. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah. But what's his face? Watson hasn't really done anything. But I will say with Watson though, that game versus the Eagles last year when Aaron Rodgers got hurt mid-game and Jordan Love came into the game, Watson hadn't done anything in that game, like leading up to Jordan Love coming into it, and then Jordan Love like just locked in on Watson and just kept targeting him, and Watson ended up having a monster game that week. So they have proven in the past that they can sync up together. Last week, Watson had 4 targets, 2 receptions for 25 yards. Wasn't much, but he ended up getting a touchdown and scoring 10.5 fantasy points. So if we're looking at these guys, I think it's like an ownership play. I think it's like we know that one of these receivers can have a big game in this matchup. It's just a matter of maybe looking to tea leaves to see who's going to be owned the most, and then just kind of going in the other direction, because it's really a crapshoot over which one of these guys could end up going off in a good matchup. With Dubs last week, he had 13 targets with Christian Watson's first week back. Watson was on that snap count though, so I don't read too much into that. But that was his heaviest target load of the season, even with Watson back in. Before that, he had 12 targets against New Orleans, and then he had 3 and 5 targets. So the first couple games of the season, he wasn't really being targeted by Jordan Love. It really took until week 3 to kind of hone in on him, and then he got those huge target loads. But from a talent perspective, Spread, who do you think gets the edge in a talent perspective between Christian Watson and Romeo Dubs? Because at the end of the day,
close.
Yeah,
it's not even close.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, like, talent's going to win out. So, it's just a matter of how quickly like Watson takes to kind of get up to speed. From coming off of his injury. But when did he get hurt? Did he get hurt in the beginning of training camp? Did he at least get some of the training camp with Jordan Love?
Yeah, it had to have been at the end of training camp, because when we were drafting best ball all summer, he never moved. And if he would have got hurt, he would have dropped, right?
Yeah, you got to figure. So, I mean, like, I would imagine, like, we've had 11 days, since that last game. And, Christian Watson had, basically working with Jordan Love throughout the summer. He got hurt, before the preseason games or whenever he got hurt. And, he came back last week. You got to figure they've been putting a lot of work in together in practice. So you got to figure that Christian Watson is got to be, pretty much, I wouldn't say completely up to speed, but he's got to be pretty close. And, his ownership is, for flex position, it looks like his ownership's going to be, pretty similar to Romeo Dubs. Like, I think there's like a 6-point difference there. But if you're looking at, captain ownership, Christian Watson's coming in about, they're both under 6. So there's not like a huge discrepancy there. But, like, either one of those dudes you could make a case for. But I tend to lean Christian Watson and who I prefer between these guys, just with the upside, but also with Christian Watson being a little bit more up to speed this week and a little bit overlooked by the field when it comes to he hasn't done anything yet this year.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. There's so many different ways you can go with tonight's game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm building a Christian Watson captain right now.
Nice.
Although I'll tell you what, every single one, I'm not really liking where I'm landing.
Yeah. Well, let's build a one of the popular ones. Let's go with, like, who do you like between Adams and Jay? They both got the same ownership. Like, who do you want to try to build a captain with?
Adams
first. Adams.
Yep.
All right. So let's put Adams in the captain. If we put Adams in the captain, like let's think through this correlation a little bit. Who do we think, like, we're going to need a lot of salary relief when we put him in the captain? I think we got to put AJ Dillon in, like, just because, we're not necessarily committing to Green Bay playing with the lead and Adams in the captain because they're coming from behind. But for the sake of argument, maybe we're putting AJ Dillon in there because Green Bay is playing with that lead, right?
Yeah. Since we need salary relief, I think that Musgrave is a no-brainer.
Okay. So
because he's a guy that we can actually project to have a high score.
Yeah.
And he's the lowest price of all those guys. I really feel like it falls off after here. I mean, of course, we've all seen these cores win where you get some, one of these $200 players in as a throwaway.
Yeah.
But for now, let's try and avoid that because I'll tell you what, I'm looking through here and all these punts. I'll tell you what, the only one I really like is Abdullah at 1,000.
Yeah. Yeah. Like for me,
maybe Austin Hooper at 600.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to I like Austin Hooper better than Abdullah, I think, if I was going with a punt. But we might be able to pull this off without having to go there.
Yeah, we have 23-4 left.
Yeah. Now I like Jordan Love just because I think he's going to get more work in the run game, but also he's going to be forced to throw more with an inefficient running game. And you can basically attack, like we established, you can attack Vegas any way you want. And Jordan Love, doing well when he's got a clean pocket, and Vegas's inability to generate pressure makes me like Love with that rushing upside and that throwing upside. So I'm gonna plug Love in there because that leaves us with 6,800 per player still left. That's a decent chunk of change that we can invest here. If we're looking, let's say from the Raiders defense up, who do we like in kind of this mid range here? Do we want to put in? Look, when I'm looking at Watson, I see Watson at like 7,800. We can get him in there just for shits and giggles and see. Yeah, I mean, if we put in Watson, look at what that gives us for options spread. It gives us the Packers D. It gives us, both the kickers. It gives us.
I think the options are just defenses and kickers at that point.
Yeah.
So let's talk through those four.
Yeah.
What would we like the best here? I think either Packers defense or Raiders kicker. Yeah,
I think you're right. I think the Raiders kicker would probably be the best way to go because that also helps to justify not having like Josh Jacobs in the captain because they're getting into the red zone, and rather than convert into touchdowns, they're getting field goals instead. And that would help us have Adams in the captain without Jimmy G too, because that means that Adams is racking up these points based on PPR, getting points per reception and getting like yards, and maybe he hits that 100-yard bonus, and yet Jimmy G does not come along with him into this optimal lineup because Jimmy G is just not converting on touchdowns. And I think that situation makes a lot of sense to have Carlson in there. If we wanted to, we could take like a guy like Hunter Renfrow or something and put him in there. But like I'm with you, Spread. I think it's like from the Raiders D up is where we'd want to go in a direction there. What do you think of Jacoby Myers' price is really cheap. He's only $7,000 on this slate. What do you think of Jacoby Myers this week and his matchup?
Well, first of all, we know they love him. He took the spot that we all thought that Renfrow was going to have for his whole life, right? Renfrow was supposed to be the new Edelman when Josh McDaniels came in. We were all so high on him for fantasy last season. Now we know McDaniels doesn't like him. I don't know why. You got to like him, especially with the game script. My concern is just will there be the concerted effort to pelt Adams? And will that take away from Jacoby? And I think that's a concern any game script you run.
Yeah.
With the Raiders ahead, with the Raiders behind. I guess if it's behind, you could see them more just going for the open guy. But I think it's really tough to act like he's just going to have a big game here. And I think it's so hard. I think that there's such a gap between Watson and Myers here.
Yeah,
it's way more than that 800. Like if I made these prices, I would either have Watson more expensive or Myers less expensive. I think that's my issue here with putting him in. When I'm putting him in, I'm only doing it to get different because I'm doing multiple lineups because I like this. You know what's so funny? I actually don't like this lineup. I just keep landing places I don't want to land. So I just want a bunch of different combinations. Where I feel like on our Jacksonville one, when we did our game script, everything just fell into place.
Mm-hmm.
Where I was just landing exactly where I wanted each time. So I'm like, I don't really need a lot of variations of this. I'm in love with these couple lineups that we built with Etienne and Christian Kirk. You're right. I just felt nothing's falling into place for me here. And maybe I'm too afraid of leaving salary on the table, but I'm really surprised that Myers is only 800 less than Watson. We'll see where that one ends up.
So this gives me an idea here with a Josh Jacobs captain build.
Okay.
Let's say that Davante Adams, like his injury is a little bit more serious than is being let on, and maybe Jair Alexander's having his way with him. So Davante Adams is not having the performance that we need him to have to justify his salary. So we got Josh Jacobs in the captain. Josh Jacobs is finally breaking out in this game. He's having that game that we've been waiting for all season. And maybe as opposed to Davante Adams, they're throwing it to Jacoby Myers with more success. I think that makes those two a great kind of pairing if you're going to go with a Josh Jacobs captain. And let's kind of go through the motions here. Like again, if we still like AJ Dillon in this script, and I think Jordan Love fits in that script too. Look at what this lineup does for us, and look at the remaining salary that we have left. We can put in Luke Musgrave still in this build, and look at that. Like we got 7,500 left with with a build like this. That gives us the ability to put in a guy like Jalen Reed, give Jordan Love another receiver. We're barely like missing on Christian Watson in this one. So maybe we take out, what if we took out Musgrave and we put in Watson? That leaves us with 4,900. That leaves us with options for the defenses and the kickers. I kind of like
Doesn't it feel like this slate's going to come down to getting this range right between Packers and Raiders?
Yeah, I think so. Because it's like the way that they have Watson and Myers and Dubs all priced down, it feels like in this game. Like I feel like any one of those dudes could be like 9K, and they're all coming in under 8K. So, and then you got guys like salary savers like Musgrave and stuff like that. I think Musgrave might be a big key to this slate tonight, because the work that Musgrave gets, like let's go through the tight ends. Like what makes you like the tight end in this matchup spread? What makes you like the tight end in this matchup?
Basically, there's no dump off for the Aaron Jones. I'm figuring he gets those dump off targets.
Yeah.
If the Raiders are going to blitz, the number one way to stop the blitz is through screens and draws. So it's going to be more work for AJ Dillon and more work for Luke Musgrave in my mind.
So if we know that AJ Dillon is going to be super chalky, right? We know that he has not been good this season. What if we took out AJ Dillon and we put in Musgrave, envisioning him, like picking up where Aaron Jones left off? We could do that, and that leaves us with 4,300. That leaves us with enough money for either kicker, which is a good situation. Like his kickers are always, like good for, like filler for one of those last guys that you want in there. If you wanted to leave salary on the table, you could go with Renfro, but we've seen that he hasn't gotten a lot of work, and I don't like putting him in the lineup with Jacoby Myers. But slots do have a pretty good matchup against Vegas. So, that would be an interesting route to go there. Also, like slots, like Vegas's defense versus, I'm sorry, like Green Bay. Well, Green Bay's a little bit better against the slot receiver. What do you know about the slot receiver versus Green Bay spread? I'm seeing
Versus Green Bay.
Yeah. They give up 18.6 fantasy points a game to the slot receiver, which is kind of middling. So it's not like Hunter Renfrow has a bad matchup, but it's like the spread says, like they just don't like Hunter Renfrow. They don't want to use him. So even if his matchup was good, I've seen Renfrow in good matchups so far this season where I thought, oh, he's going to get at least X amount of targets, and the guy just does not get the targets.
He doesn't get the targets. I don't know why McDaniels doesn't like him, but that's the case, and we got to go ahead and deal with it because
and we're dealing with over like a year's worth of sample size here too, because Renfrow hasn't done anything. Like, has he had any big games like as a under McDaniels yet?
No. Only Gruden loved him. McDaniels doesn't.
Yeah, we're looking at 4 targets last week against the Chargers, 2 targets the week before that, and 1 target versus Buffalo. And 4 targets, that's with Davante Adams coming out of the game for like some of that game. So Hunter Renfrow just isn't a guy that they like with his coaching staff for whatever reason. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up getting traded before that trade deadline. But I mean, regardless of Hunter Renfrow, I think we're in a good situation with a build like this for Jacobs. That leaves us with either kicker that we could lean on, or we could go with the Raiders defense. So like if you wanted to do a 4-2 build with Green Bay guys, I think it would make a lot of sense to have Carlson in there instead of D Carlson, the Vegas kicker. If you had A Carlson in there, Anders, I believe is his first name. Let's look at what he's done.
Are they related?
I don't think so. Like, I don't know. I don't know, to be honest with you. But he had 8 points last week. He had 4 points a week. He hasn't had any big weeks. Week 1, he had 10. and I don't think that like Vegas will necessarily like prevent them from scoring touchdowns. So maybe Daniel Carlson would be the way to go this week, but he hasn't done anything yet this season either. He hasn't scored over 5 fantasy points yet this season. So, I mean, but if you think either of those guys is capable of scoring a few touchdowns based on your whatever game script you guys are writing, and by the way, don't always use the lineups that you see built on shows like this. Just use the information, use the nuggets that we give you on some of these players, and use the thinking through the game and lineup building strategy and stuff like that, instead of just building the same lineups, because we're not always going to be right like on our game scripts, and you guys are just as capable as any of us as coming up with with a game script and thinking through correlation and everything like that. But if you do want to use it and you end up hitting with it, make sure to tweet us too, so we can brag about it a little bit. But yeah, what do you think, Spread, about kind of clearing this out, and maybe we can go with a more fun direction as a captain, a lesser owned avenue for building out a game script here?
Who do we want to? Which game script are we using? Are we using Packers or Raiders?
I think we go. I think the Packers are going to take this game, and I think they're going to do it pretty easily. I know the spread is only we're looking at a 2-point spread, and Vegas, I don't know, it's like we were talking about at the top of the show. I don't know how Vegas is favored in this game, other than being at home. But this to me feels like Green Bay could win this by over a touchdown to me personally. But what are your thinking on this spread? What do you think like a potential outcome could be for this game?
Okay, so right now I lean towards the Packers, but I love primetime dogs at home. And if you and I are messaging tonight or tomorrow and the Raiders win, I'm not shocked, right? Like,
yeah.
So let's say the Giants beat the Dolphins yesterday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Messaging you, Simon, I can't believe this, right? And we'll be like, well, these things happen. But let's do it for fun, right? You know how much I'm loving this little dump off angle.
Yeah.
Let's do a Luke Musgrave captain and see where that takes us, because that leaves so much on the table. I mean, we have so many different options if that ends up being where we end up. So let's try a Musgrave captain, see where it turns out. I mean, hey, we might throw it away, right? It might just be like, well, this doesn't really give us as much as we wanted. So that's why I think it's fun to talk through these.
Yeah.
And figure out the best way to approach this.
Yeah, I like that. I like having Luke Musgrave as the captain there. I think if we're going to have him as captain, we probably want to have Jordan Love in there too, right?
Yeah, we have to.
Okay. So let's get Jordan Love in there. Now, if Musgrave is getting like the captain spot, I think it's because he's having a 2 touchdown game tonight, right? So we need Musgrave to get close to the red zone. And I think in order to do that, Love has to be able to move the ball down the field in chunks. So I think it would make a lot of sense to have Christian Watson or Romeo Doubs in there. Like these guys catching bombs but not converting touchdowns, like because Musgrave's coming in there and poaching those touchdowns. So which of these guys do you want to put in there?
Between who?
Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson.
Watson.
All right, so let's get Watson in there.
Do you agree there?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree for sure. I think if I'm doing this build though with Musgrave as the captain, I'm going to do one variation with Watson in there. I'm going to do one variation with Doubs because I think,
and that's why I think it's fun. Just like if you have a Raiders game script where you think they win, I think you build one that's very close.
Yeah,
and you build another one that's you just build the same other 5 guys and just switch Jacobs and Adams out. Yeah.
So speaking of Jacobs and Adams, I think we're going to definitely want at least one of those dudes in this lineup. Who's your preference? We can try to get both of them in, but who's your preference for one of those guys?
Between who?
Jacobs and Adams.
I like Adams more.
Okay. So let's get Adams in there. Let's see what happens if we put Jacobs in this build too. Let's see what that leaves us with. Leaves us with 2,800. We've already talked about like how we don't like anyone really down that low. So let's maybe take Jacobs out.
Yeah, I say we take him out. If we're gonna pair Adams, I think we either pair him with Myers or we go all the way down for a punt on Abdullah or Hooper.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's put in Myers.
Okay.
Now
where do we end up there?
That leaves us with
6,400. Oh, well, it's obvious then. I mean, you have to take Jaden Reed at that point.
Yeah, Jaden Reed.
I mean, do you want to leave 2,200 on the table and take Packers defense? I don't know.
Yeah, I'd leave money on the table because if we put Reed in there, like he's going to be poaching some of that slot work away from Musgrave, but also he's going to be giving Jordan Love more fantasy points and kind of jeopardizing, Musgrave being the top scorer. Although, like with the salary relief that Musgrave provides, he doesn't necessarily need to be the highest scorer on the slate. He just needs to be, high enough so that he's preventing, one of these bigger names from needing to be in the captain. So, yeah, I think you could put Reed in there, but I think he's just going to poach, too many. I think Dylan would make a lot of sense, though, just based on what we've been talking about, and maybe, like Dylan gets enough work and has the most upside, just in this price range here to kind of make it happen. I think it'd have to be Dylan or one of the kickers. Like I think from like a storyline perspective on like trying to justify Luke Musgrave in the captain spot, like those guys would probably make the most sense in this game script.
All right. Well, if that's the case, let's go AJ Dillon.
Okay. AJ Dillon. Right. Now, let's see. So AJ Dillon, we'd have enough room there. Like if you wanted to experiment with this build a little bit, like if you wanted to say put in, instead of Adams, you wanted to put in Jacobs, that'd leave you with 7K. Kind of the same situation, so maybe if you're going to build one of these angles with Adams, just swap out and put in a Jacobs lineup too, just to kind of hedge your bets there. But the build itself, the game script itself, is what's important. What's important here, and it's just thinking through a game, thinking through, like I like Luke Musgrave. How can he end up being the captain? What kind of circumstances have to happen within this game to justify, like Luke Musgrave scoring the most points, out of all these skill position players to justify, to put him in a position to be a captain. So I kind of, I like trying a captain with Christian Watson. Let's put Christian Watson in this next build. I like Christian Watson. I like Jordan Love, for a variety of reasons, with his rushing upside, but also, with his ability to throw with a clean pocket. I like Jacobs just because of that matchup against the Green Bay defense, but you could easily go Davante Adams, like we've been talking about this whole time. In this situation, I want to put Dylan in there, and I do like Musgrave too. So if we put Musgrave in there too, that leaves us with 8K. So I mean, like all these builds, it's like Spread mentioned earlier. It's going to come down to these mid-range players, like these these under 7K guys. Because if we swap out Jacobs and we put in Adams, we're still left with that same, those same options. So, it's going to be interesting, like to see what people do, with these pieces. Are they going to leave more? We got Jacoby Myers. We could put in there pretty easily. Yeah. So Jacoby Myers goes in there easily, like with either Adams or with Jacobs. I was just kind of didn't see that. Yeah,
don't you think he correlates better with Jacobs though?
Oh yeah. That build itself, Spread, like that might be the winner, like right there. One of these might be the winner. But I like Christian Watson in captain. I do like what Spread was getting at there, taking advantage of the news that we got today and building a story around what's his face? What's that tight end's name? Musgrave. So that's a really good way to do this stuff. It's just kind of use the news to your advantage. Figure out how's this missing piece going to affect the rest of the lineup. Knowing the situation with Musgrave, he is a highly drafted tight end in a market of tight ends that is, supposedly the best in the history of tight end drafts. And we've seen it with Laporta. Laporta had a breakout already. Musgrave was in the same, coming out of the same, sentences as Laporta. Musgrave is
I think as a player, he's close to equal. I think Laporta's in a way better situation though. I mean, obviously I've told you why I'm sold on Musgrave tonight, but I just thought for the year with having Jared Goff, that offensive line, and being indoors, right? That was what put Laporta there. But to your point, just as individual prospects in the draft process, they were very equal. And in fact, some like Musgrave more.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, Musgrave, he has the ability to break out. He was, he would have had an opportunity last week, But like he just didn't get, he just got hurt in the game. He just got hurt, and it kind of blew up in our faces. I think, I want to say that DeGuara ended up doing pretty well. He ended up getting the 4 targets in that game. So, this DeGuara hadn't gotten any targets all season, and then he got 4 targets in that matchup that we wanted Musgrave in. So Musgrave, if he'd gotten those 4 targets and then he got 1 target on top of that, he would have gotten he was probably going to head to getting a decent amount of targets in that game last week. So they wanted to use him. They just we just didn't get it. We just didn't get the use because of the injury. But he does not carry an injury designation into Monday's matchup. It was a concussion situation. He was evaluated for a concussion last week in that game, and then they decided to pull him. So, yeah, Musgrave is going to be, a good piece of the puzzle tonight. And then we got a lot of other fallout from the Aaron Jones news, mainly AJ Dillon. And I think Jordan Love, to an extent, will be forced to throw the ball a lot more. And these guys are all priced cheap. So they're all easy to get in there. And, I think it's going to be kind of easy to put lineups together when you take, kind of an approach like we've been taking on the show today, Spread.
Yeah, I think this is fun. On the Jacksonville game, I love the lineups that we built, and I didn't build too many. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to look at how many I've built so far today. Just while we're talking through with the various iterations, all these different captains, all these way to goes. I've built 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 9 different lineups right now that are just variations of the different ones that we've talked about. So this is a great showdown slate. Which is why it's so cool, DFS and betting on a game that I've just completely scratched off my betting card. I still have a fun way to get some action here tonight. So let's see which one of these scripts play out. And I tell you what, Simon, I won't be surprised if I message you later tonight where we say another show and we nailed the captain again. So, like I said, my favorite 2 are Davante and Musgrave. Work with that what you will, but if one of those 2 ends up in the optimal, I'll be certain to send you a message and let you know how excited I am that we nailed it again.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm kind of leaning towards the passing game on Green Bay and the captain. Christian Watson is probably my favorite right now, but I don't hate the idea of dubs. I just got to get a little bit more research done today to kind of see which direction that I want to lean in as far as that goes. But I do like the idea of Musgrave captain too. I think that leaves you a lot of room to do some cool builds. And I just think that it's going to be an interesting game tonight. I also like Jordan Love. I think I like Jordan Love and I like Christian Watson. I think that's where I'm leaning. And I built
1 Love and 3 Watson captains of the 9.
Yeah. I like that.
And I built 3 Musgrave, only 1 Davante, but that's because I duped it with a Jacobs.
Yeah.
Captain.
Yeah, and I honestly, I normally don't like doing quarterback captains, but I do kind of like Love in this game just because he's going to be in a throwing situation. Knowing the explosive weapons that Las Vegas has and knowing that he's not going to have Aaron Jones. So I think he's going to be kind of, forced into it a little bit, but he's going to be comfortable throwing tonight because they should be able to be good against that Vegas defense.
Yeah, it should be a fun one tonight, and thank you for helping me find some sort of joy in the misery that has been supporting the Las Vegas Raiders.
No problem, Spread. Spread, why don't you tell everybody where they can find your stuff and where they can find the show with you and Tyler later.
Well, that's right. So that's on the Nuke the House YouTube channel. We'll be going live in about 5 minutes. So, that'll be up around the time that you're watching this. So if you want to check that one out, it is kind of evergreen as well for the week because the majority of the show will be a recap of what we saw yesterday and how that affects our individual rankings on those teams. So, for example, we'll look at a game like Jacksonville and Buffalo, and I'll give a little spoiler there. We're not going to adjust the teams because of the performance. We'll look at the Dolphins and the Giants. Do we downgrade the Giants, or are the Dolphins a juggernaut? And we go through each game like that, our takeaways and how that affects us betting moving forward. And of course, I'm still writing at Bookmakers Review. I'll be on ESPN 97.5 next Friday if you are in the Houston area. But just follow me at Spread Astaire, and you'll see all the content we're producing.
Yep. Always good stuff, Spread. And make sure to follow at Heatseeker Sports over on X. Subscribe to the YouTube page. Give us a like on this video. The likes give us the good mojo, Spread. Like when you guys hit like on the video, we got 15 likes on the London video. We ended up hitting on the captain. We got a decent amount of likes on the video before that. We ended up hitting on the captain. So if you want to use these lineups and hit with the captain, make sure to hit that like and subscribe to the YouTube page. Subscribe to Kegs page too. What is it? Nuke the slate?
Nuke the house.
Nuke the house. Yeah, make sure to subscribe to Nuke the House. And Kegs should be on one of these shows coming up here soon and looking at next Monday potentially. But thanks for watching and enjoy the game tonight.